I'm assuming this does what I need it to. Right, yeah. So hello, I'm Robin. So Courage and Truth. Sounds like I'm going to give a presentation about a crack commando unit, but it's not. It's about advertising. But these are the sort of two words that I wanted people to leave with. So that said, I'm going to go on a 14-minute ramble through conjecture and a bit of waffle probably, and into cul-de-sacs and maybe back out. And I'm going to get back to that slide at the end. So when you see that again, you know you can go on to your next thing. But hopefully, when we get there, it will have made some sense. So when I started in advertising quite a long time ago now, people used to say that the advertising was better than the TV it interrupted. And I think that is nowhere near the case now. Yes, TV has got a lot better, but I think advertising has got a lot worse. And I think that's our fault collectively. I'm sure there's people here going, oh, it's agencies, it's marketing, whatever. But collectively, I think we have to take some responsibility for that, myself included. And I think this chart is interesting because it shows a kind of a trend towards the rational, towards information over emotion, and information over entertainment. And I think that that's where we've all gone wrong. And at Sky, we are an entertainment company, and so we should be making entertaining ads. And that has been a bit of an internal mantra for a while. But actually, I think kind of more than that, as a broadcaster of TV and as the kind of one of the biggest advertisers in the UK, I think actually we've got a kind of responsibility to try and make commercial breaks more entertaining again. And so that, I think, is the key for us getting from good to great. And look, I think we were doing good advertising, right? Again, it was full of information. We were telling people lots of stuff. It worked. People were buying our products. We were building a brand. But it was never really that entertaining, never really quite good enough. And so this next, this campaign that I'm going to show you is, we're not there yet, right? It's not great. It's not picking up at Cannes. It's not sort of, it's not Guinness Surfer. But it is, I hope, a kind of beacon on this journey, and then maybe a catalyst to kind of keep us going. So this is an ad from a campaign which is continuing. There's another burst of it coming out soon. But I will play this ad already into the commercial break, just 3 minutes into the presentation. But here you go.
What's it like having Sky TV? Well, it's great. Feels like when the train doors stop, but at that exact place where you're standing. Then you actually get a seat. And it's one of these. But then the conductor comes by, but not with those weird stale sandwiches. She has sticky toffee pudding. Then the train gets diverted.
So look, there we have it, a campaign, an ad that is based more on entertainment than information. And so what I kind of go into now is the courage and truth bit, which is really about the kind of creative process that got us there. And when I was asked to speak, there's lots of things I could have said about why the ad turned out like it did. But there were two things that stood out, courage and truth, and they felt like they were true of advertising in general. And so here is maybe a specific that illustrates the whole. So when I talk about courage, what I mean is the sort of collective courage of conviction to keep going in a direction that you've chosen. So this is meant to represent the creative process. The creative process is one of expansion and contraction. You could say any number of things. You decide on a brief, a single-minded brief. Anyone remember them? And then from there you go to lots of concepts that you could go with, and you choose one, and then from there you make lots of choices along the way. Whether it's, these are all kind of binary illustration of binary choices, but two or three options at every stage, and you keep making those choices, and that takes you on a path that potentially gets increasingly, well, when you make this decision up front to go one or two directions, people involved, stakeholders, whatever, aren't necessarily envisaging where you get to, and somehow you've got to keep that this kind of journey that you're going on, you've got to keep people happy with where you get to, given where you started. And I think that for us, the key with that piece of advertising was it was very different to what we'd done before. And a lot of times along the way, people were kind of trying to reverse out of it and go back to a decision made way at the start about one of them being entertainment over information. Another one I'll come on to in a minute. But what you have to do is keep with that conviction that you've made that choice and you've got to stick with it. And the next choice you've got to stick with that, and the next choice, the next choice. Because when you end up down here and you decide, oh well, actually we want a bit of what we thought if we'd gone off that way, and then you try and get there and kind of wander through the woods to find it, you just get lost. And what you end up with is a compromise that does nothing. So I think that one key in the creative process is that courage of conviction to just keep going on the journey that you've set out on, and keep confidence in your choices, and not be happy with a kind of hedging your bets and doing a bit of two things. The other thing that I think was interesting with this campaign, and is in general, is about truth. So I think there's a lot of talk about truth in advertising: market truth, brand truth, customer truth, and everyone talks about finding the truth behind a product, behind a campaign. But the truth is, not all truths are equal. I think there's something in uncomfortable truths. In people, I think, quite often lean towards their strengths rather than their weaknesses. And actually, I think that in the uncomfortable truth of a weakness, there is something really tangible and motivating. So 4 great brands who've done amazing advertising over the year, all of them, I think, have had a weakness that they've turned into a strength. Guinness, you had to wait for it. Good things come to those who wait. Avis was number 2. We Try Harder. Stella, expensive, reassuringly expensive. Marmite, love it or hate it. They all lent into their weakness. And so when we started out, we discovered a weakness, and we lent into that. And I'll come onto that in a second. But the reason for this peacock is because actually in nature there is this whole thing about weaknesses and strengths. There's a wonderful book by a man called Jared Diamond called The Rise and Fall of the Third Chimpanzee. It's all about us and why we do stuff that we do. And he talks about a scientist called Zahavi who found handicap theory, which is the idea that the peacock's tail, for instance, is actually a huge encumbrance. If you're going to be chased by a fox or anything, that is a nightmare. But by displaying that weakness, it is actually a show of strength. And I think that in all those brands we talked about, by displaying their weakness, it was a show of strength. And we discovered, I think, a weakness, which was that no one could describe why having Sky was so great. And there was a 60-point difference between people who have Sky and people who don't, and how they felt about it. And we realized that while people liked having it, no one could articulate, including ourselves really, why having Sky was great. And we'd spent years trying to do that, going into kind of product detail and trying to find these strengths in our products. And actually, when we started talking about our weakness, which was that no one could describe why having Sky was good, and it just felt a bit like something random, suddenly we got something that was interesting. So I guess the point here is, I'm sure, go away from here today, rather than looking for the strength in your product, in your brands, go and look for the weakness and see if you can make something of that. So that is the truth that I think we should all be looking for, and that takes me to, and if you find that truth, that weakness, I think it then led us certainly to a kind of more human way of being. I think we'd spent years being bold, brash, boastful, telling people how brilliant we were, and actually when we found a weakness, it made us that much more human. I think we are by nature maybe more, if you're British, self-deprecating, and suddenly by talking about your weakness, you become much more charming and normal and human. And as a result, our campaign performed better than any we've done in recorded history. So there you go. Go and find your weakness, and courage and truth is the way forward in a new font, because actually this isn't about a crack commando unit, but about what you can do in a corporate culture. There you go. Thank you very much.
Questions? All right. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Oh,
hang on.
There's one.
Hi, thank you. Were there any issues internally with you not actually articulating your strengths to customers? Because people are able to articulate your strengths, that was your weakness, but like, did you want to show why people should have Sky, and did people internally want to show that instead of highlighting the weakness?
So look, it goes back to what I think what I touched on. For years, we talked about that, and I think there are places where people want that information, right? When they go to your website and whatever else, they can find out that information in a fully detailed way. If you're interrupting their day with a piece of TV advertising, people will tell you in research they're really interested in all that detail, but when it comes to the moment that they're watching the TV in their living room, they're not in that frame of mind. What they want is to be entertained, and they want to be. All you need to do is hook them enough to get them on that journey. And I think that the kind of being entertaining, being honest, being different, being human, all I think starts that journey in a better way than trying to list off a load of information when someone's not interested.